φίλοι του καναλιού μας, καλησπέρα σας. Θα θέλαμε να σας ενημερώσουμε πως η εκπομπή «Στην Αιχμή» του Δόρατος με τον Άρη Λαμπρόπουλο θα ξεκινήσει σήμερα στις 6:45. Μέχρι την ώρα έναρξης εκπομπής μπορείτε να μείνετε μαζί μας παρακολουθώντας το ντοκυμαντέρ της Deutche Welle «Διαφθορά στην Ευρώπη» για το αέριο και το πετρέλαιο του Αζερμπαϊτζάν. Καλή θέαση!
Azerbaijan, a former Soviet republic bounded by the Caspian Sea. The country's people and media are routinely suppressed. And yet, the country is becoming increasingly important for Europe due to its considerable gas and oil reserves. Frank Schwabe came here as an election observer on behalf of the Council of Europe.
It was the first election where I saw massive electoral fraud. Interestingly, everything in this country is controlled. There's no free press, nothing. It's almost at the bottom of the Press Freedom Index.
That's why we filmed this secretly and at great risk to all those wanting to shed light on how one of Europe's biggest corruption scandals could happen.
Along comes a little lawmaker who isn't poor and who sees this, and then follows all the things they can do here, where they can get invited to, along with the president and his wife, on board boats where they get gifts, and where ladies knock on their door in the night. And then they think they're far away from home, from Berlin and Strasbourg, away from it all. And they see this, and they think, oh, the weather's lovely, and everyone here's rich. There's no issue here. Everyone's nice. And that gives them strange ideas. Not everyone, but some. And they let themselves be bought.
Buying European politicians? How does that work? Frank Schwabe has been a member of the German parliament, the Bundestag, since 2005.
Mein Name ist Frank Schwabe, schönen guten Tag.
Schwabe also heads the German delegation in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. He travels regularly to Strasbourg, the headquarters of the continent's leading human rights organization. The Council of Europe was founded after the Second World War to safeguard human rights.
This organization is clearly at a crossroads. Human rights in general are at a crossroads worldwide.
For all his dedication, he still believes politicians need to be prepared to compromise.
If we were to say that we would no longer have any doings or dealings with Azerbaijan, or worse, then we wouldn't be left with much. Of course, I also realize we strengthen regimes by making economic deals with them. I have never proposed that we should no longer have any dealings with them. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't speak frankly.
Is a frank discussion with Azerbaijan even possible? The country lives from its oil and gas reserves. It's achieved considerable wealth and international standing, with the fossil fuels Europe urgently needs.
This country is, depending on how you look at it, blessed with oil wealth. But in effect, it's also a curse, because without democratic oversight, the money ends up in the pockets of a few.
Frank Schwabe is preparing for a risky meeting. He wants to offer hope to a woman whose freedom is anything but a given.
We're meeting Khadija Ismailova, one of the most courageous and also best-known critics of the regime here in Azerbaijan.
Khadija Ismailova's work as an investigative journalist and blogger endangers her life. Only her prominence and international pressure protect her.
The government is very cautious as it knows she's a symbolic figure. If she were arrested tomorrow, there would be immediate international protests. The Council of Europe would pass resolutions and Azerbaijan would be named and shamed. They don't want that.
As soon as she extends her hand in greeting, men in plain clothes, presumably from the domestic secret service, step in. They want to prevent her from giving an interview.
Hi, nice to meet you. How are you?
In the elevator, she tells us to turn the camera back on. She ignores the officials' instructions.
It's difficult to live with the feeling that someone shut you up.
The journalist refuses to be silenced, even though her safety is at risk.
You know, you walk through the city, you see the beautiful building, I see the corruption.
Corruption and intimidation tactics are linked to the family of President Ilham Aliyev. Aliyev took over power from his father. Ismailova is investigating the family's business affairs.
So I've learned how to look into Panamanian registry. And I found 11 companies that belong to the president's family members.
She uncovered undisclosed shareholdings belonging to the presidential family in privatized banks and telecommunications companies. Shortly afterwards, Ismailova was sentenced to 7 years in prison. After a year and a half, she was released on parole after international protests.
Khadija Ismailova is one of the most dedicated defenders of human rights and journalists here in Azerbaijan and probably beyond. This really is a shining example of someone who is risking her personal life, putting her happiness on the line for a good cause. And she deserves to be supported internationally for her commitment by anyone who can. And of course, it is incredibly disappointing to see that there are lawmakers who ultimately have stabbed people like Khadija Ismailova in the back out of self-interest, for their own personal gain. It's tragic and also really shameful.
The German politician is used to supporting people living under a dictatorship who are fighting for their rights, freedom, and dignity. But he never imagined that he would have to stand up to his own allies in the Council of Europe to do so.
We're in the heart of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe.
It all began in 2013 at one of his first votes as a member of the Parliamentary Assembly.
That was the vote in the Parliamentary Assembly where, in an emotional debate, it was ultimately decided by a majority that political prisoners do not exist in Azerbaijan.
But let's also talk about the people who are in prison.
If we vote for Mr. Strasser's report, and goodness me, I hope we don't, then we can't stop there.
The serious mistakes and deliberate distortion of facts.
In view of the extremely complex geopolitical situation, which many colleagues have already addressed, dangerous and delicate. For this reason, I do not hesitate to vote against this report.
The vote was merely intended to establish the existence of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, far from a secret. But quite unexpectedly, the majority of representatives voted against the report by the then deputy head of the German delegation, Christoph Stresser.
It shattered me personally too. It took me a long time to get over it.
To this day, Stresser hasn't fully come to terms with the defeat. But why? Is that not a part of day-to-day politics?
It was unprecedented for the Council of Europe, for the Parliamentary Assembly to reject a motion from a committee with such a majority.
It wasn't just the outcome of the vote that surprised Stresser, but how it came about. The German Commissioner for Human Rights had never seen anything like it.
The plenary suddenly filled up unexpectedly. There were well over 200 members in the room, which is an enormous number for these parliamentary meetings. And it was absolutely clear that these people had been mobilized.
The representatives were from Italy, France and the UK, but also from Germany. There were even people hugging each other, celebrating this result. And today I know they were celebrating the fact that they were paid a lot of money from the event.
That decision was bought.
Serious allegations. Several investigations into suspected corruption are currently underway against former members of another European institution, the European Parliament. And what does Azerbaijan have to say about the corruption allegations? We asked the embassy. Its response? Azerbaijan is building relations with European countries in a transparent and legal manner. At the time, Frank Schwabe debated whether he should stay in the Council of Europe.
I found the whole celebration of Azerbaijan's success so bizarre and disturbing. I said, either you leave it here and now, or you try to do everything you can to prevent it from happening again, even though I hadn't really understood what exactly had happened.
Then someone in the know reached out to him. Gerald Knaus is the head of the European Stability Initiative think tank. He researches corruption worldwide and has excellent connections all the way to Azerbaijan. He told Frank Schwabe what his sources were telling him.
We already had sources in Azerbaijan who tried to explain it. A few insiders explained how people were being systematically bribed, how people were systematically given gifts in the rooms, how money was transferred, vacations organized, with a whole list of names.
3 members of the German Bundestag, Eduard Lindner, Axel Fischer, and Karin Strenz, also came under suspicion. All 3 were said to have received money from Azerbaijan, traveling to the country and taking part in election observation missions.
All we could say was, insiders explained to us how the regime operates. And what we're seeing is the results. Representatives who stand up and say that black is white, that rigged elections are fair elections, that political prisoners are hooligans and criminals.
Strenz, Fischer, and Lindner all denied the accusations. Frank Schwabe was also in Baku to observe the elections on behalf of the Council of Europe. On election day, the observers were meant to be visiting several polling stations and documenting events. Schwabe recalls a disturbing encounter.
Along came Mrs. Strenz, shopping bags on both arms, on the day of the election observation.
German lawmaker Karin Strenz was also in Baku to observe the elections. But she was visiting boutiques that day.
Mrs. Strenz was out shopping, and yet was confident the next day that it was another important step towards free and fair elections. Of course, it was nothing of the sort.
In the meantime, authorities in other European countries had launched initial investigations, but not in Germany.
We know, thanks to Italian prosecutors, that an Azerbaijani assembly member had suspiciously transferred over 2.4 million euros via letterbox companies to an Italian lawmaker. He was chair of the European People's Party, which was the largest bloc in the Parliamentary Assembly. That was right at the time of this vote on political prisoners. We know that. The transfers were discovered, the emails, the conversations between the two were discovered.
In an email, the Italian thanked the Azerbaijani representative with the words, "Your gifts are very tasty," and, quote, "Your wish is my command." He was convicted in Italy, but acquitted due to a lack of evidence. Frank Schwabe and Gerald Knaus hoped, nevertheless, that law enforcement agencies would take action. No one should get away scot-free. The reality was different.
Azerbaijan remained a member of the Council of Europe. Even when it became clear what was happening here, they could continue with impunity. And for this reason, authoritarian states will not shy away from using money to try to corrupt our institutions, democracies and parliaments.
The trail of corruption and violence also led to the Mediterranean island of Malta. Matthew Caruana Galizia looks back on the darkest days of his life.
It's this is the project that led to my mother's assassination. It's this project.
The electro-gas power plant is a joint venture involving Maltese business people, German industrial giant Siemens, and the Azerbaijan state-owned company SOCAR. It's part of an ambitious strategy to provide Europe with gas via a pipeline from Azerbaijan in the future. Daphne Caruana Galizia discovered that high-ranking Maltese politicians were covertly involved in the gas project via shell companies in Panama. Matthew's brother Andrew remembers his mother's stunning reports.
And when this came out, I remember feeling this sort of, just this empty sensation in my stomach.
Journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia didn't know her assassination was being planned.
The bomb went off as my mother was coming down the hill. And the force of the explosion, it just sent the car careening into the field here, and it ended up in that spot where there's the banner.
Daphne Caruana Galizia died in the burning wreckage of her car. The investigation got off to a faltering start. It looked as if the authorities were trying to protect powerful people in Malta. But her son Matthew pushed on.
My mother was contacted by a source from within Electrogas, and this source was passing on the agreements that the Maltese government was refusing to publish, detailing the terms of the deals with Azerbaijan and with the people from the private sector behind the project in Malta.
He followed the money to Geneva in Switzerland. The Azerbaijan state-owned company SOCAR has offices there in a prime location.
So SOCAR's role in this was most likely as a vehicle for kickbacks to those Maltese politicians I mentioned with secret Panama companies.
SOCAR did not respond to our request for comment. The brothers' investigations led them deeper into a network of corruption in European politics. It all revolved around raw materials.
It scared people. If they felt they could get away with murdering the country's most famous journalist, then they could get away with anything. You know, it's just a question of when they decide to act.
With fear following them, they sought help outside Malta and turned to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, PACE. Frank Schwabe took on the case.
It was actually even scarier because we knew so little, so we didn't know who was behind it. It really felt like a minefield, and we obviously couldn't trust our own half our own national delegation in PACE.
Despite massive resistance from Azerbaijani representative Samed Sedov, Frank Schwabe and fellow campaigners were able to push through a special report. The Council of Europe listened to the brothers. The pressure paid off. There were arrests in Malta, and the first sentences were handed down. The family of the murdered journalist, Daphne Caruana Galizia, continued their own investigative journalistic work.
We were able to uncover that money came from Azerbaijan, bounced around Europe like a ping pong ball, going to Switzerland, Latvia, then to the United Arab Emirates, into a bank account belonging to Jürgen Fenech. Now, because he is being prosecuted, for his role in my mother's assassination, there is a distinct possibility that those funds were used to finance the assassination itself.
Maltese businessman Jürgen Fenech is in custody and awaiting trial this year in connection with the murder. In Germany, investigations were launched into the three Bundestag members, Eduard Lindner, Axel Fischer, and Karin Strenz. In a statement, Fischer referred to bogus evidence and politically motivated investigations. A few months later, Karin Strenz died suddenly at the age of 53. For the first time in years, Khadija Ismailova was allowed to leave her country. Her first destination, Germany, to report at the Bundestag on the situation in Azerbaijan.
Last time I was in Berlin, it was 8 years ago. These 8 years I was under travel ban, then in prison, then again under travel ban. So it was a difficult time.
The journalist is also critical of Germany's role. After all that's happened, why are German politicians still sticking by Azerbaijan?
It's disappointing, but that's how it is. You understand that for European politician, his constituency demanding the gas is much more important than Azerbaijani political prisoner.
Commodities mean power, and Europeans are more dependent than ever before. Vast quantities of raw materials will be crucial in implementing the European Union's Green Deal and phasing out fossil fuels like oil and gas. Thanks to Azerbaijan's gas and oil reserves, President Ilham Aliyev is already a welcome guest and energy partner. And he clearly has his eyes set on the future. In September 2023, Azerbaijani troops took control of the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region within just a few days. Azerbaijan celebrated its victory, while over 130,000 ethnic Armenians fled. When asked, Azerbaijan said no one had been forced to leave the territory. A government report on Azerbaijan's economic minerals indicates what this so-called liberation operation was really about. The raw materials of the future, like copper, cobalt, and lithium. Just 1 month after the Nagorno-Karabakh offensive, Azerbaijan's Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, Mukhtar Babayev, invited guests to the Geomining Forum in Baku. It was the first of its kind in the country.
The new territories are rich in natural resources, which will play an important role in reconstruction. Thank you and good luck.
Representatives from German organizations and companies also attended.
We can find what we need for the future here. And for the future, we need metals for renewable energies in the automotive sector, for electromobility. And many of the deposits are located in the previously occupied territories, which are now being developed and are gradually being integrated into Azerbaijan's economy.
Azerbaijan could be a very good partner for us, in the sense that we could also obtain copper, gold, aluminium and other resources. And this could enable very good cooperation. A win-win situation for both sides.
What role does the country's human rights record play in all this?
The subject of human rights isn't so straightforward here. I don't know much about it, I must admit. I haven't really looked into it. Aliyev doesn't go around poisoning dissidents in England or Germany or have them shot or killed in the street. That doesn't happen here.
For mining companies, it's all about claims. The mining rights in the areas now under Azerbaijani control. Anglo-Asian Mining is traded on the London Stock Exchange. The company had already made a deal worth several billion euros with Azerbaijan a year before the military operation. Farhang Hejazi is a top executive at Anglo-Asian Mining.
Of course, I should not deny that the current strategic metal situation in the world was also a motive behind that. And especially in the Europe, America, those metals demands will be a strategic concept, not just commercial.
Azerbaijan is looking to the future. The strategic foundation is being laid here in the border region with Nagorno-Karabakh. Minerals for future technologies, critical for the European Green Deal. These crucial raw materials are intended to ensure that Azerbaijan can continue to pursue its power politics in a post-gas and oil era.
Let's look at it like that. Except some European countries, the other European countries, they wanted to leave the dirty job to the others. Yeah? And if they are paying now, they deserve to pay. If during the assessments, Europe finds itself a little bit dependent on all aspects on the others, not in a reliable way, this is a situation that they have built it themselves.
In Azerbaijan, the mining of critical raw materials is developing rapidly. Why is Europe clinging on?
Because there are raw materials there which we need. But we're not only doing this with Azerbaijan, we're also doing this with China and other countries. Unfortunately, I could tell you stuff about all these other countries too. What's especially unpleasant about Azerbaijan is that they're shamelessly exploiting this role.
After all that's happened, Azerbaijan is in a stronger geopolitical position than ever before. Frank Schwabe doesn't have the power to change that. But in the Council of Europe, he wants to finally hold Azerbaijan to account.
We're currently discussing making Azerbaijan's representatives responsible for all that they're doing and the rules they're breaking.
This meeting at the Council of Europe is intended to set a precedent.
So I'm going, yes, I see the hand of Mr. Schwabe, yes. Frank, the floor is open.
Thank you very much, dear President.
If Frank Schwabe's motion is accepted, the Azerbaijani delegation's credentials to the Council of Europe would not be ratified.
This isn't easy. The pressure is huge right now. They're contacting the German Chancellor, the German Foreign Minister, and all the other Council of Europe member states. That's where we stand.
Would those members supporting this challenge please rise in their places?
The moment of truth. Previously, the Stresa report was voted down here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The challenge has the support required under rules of procedures.
This is the first time Azerbaijan has been held accountable in the Council of Europe.
It's not pleasant, but we need to say now that we won't put up with it.
The representatives of Azerbaijan left in protest. Almost simultaneously, the public prosecutor's office in Munich brought charges against 2 former members of the Bundestag in connection with allegations of bribery by Azerbaijan. The battle for the raw materials of the future is only just beginning. In Azerbaijan and many other countries, can Europe take part without sacrificing its values?